Hello, my crispy crustaceans. It is Onion Creature here to talk to you about today's Nintendo Direct on Kirby Air Riders. This is the second Nintendo Direct that Sakurai has done, and in it he detailed a lot of new information. Now, I'm not going to go over all of that because there was a whole hour's worth of stuff. I will discuss some of the highlights of this presentation. First of all, we start off with the Sakurai brand of comedy, where he is surprised that the presentation is 60 minutes, which, many of us are ourselves thinking when looking at this, because, that is quite a long time for a Nintendo Direct on Kirby Air Riders. As I've said before, it really does seem like Nintendo is giving Sakurai free rein to promote this game in whatever way he sees fit. You know, they're treating it as a pretty big deal, giving it the big November launch date, which is usually reserved for big holiday games, and it seems like this is being positioned as a big holiday game for the Switch 2, which is pretty crazy. There aren't that many Switch 2 exclusives this year that are big, full retail games. We got Mario Kart World at launch, Donkey Kong Bonanza a month after, and then since then, not much other than stuff like Drag X Drive, which is a smaller game, and then Pokemon ZA, which launched in October, but it's also a Switch 1 game, and it's a Pokemon game, so it's a bit of a special case, not really a full, regular Nintendo Switch 2 retail exclusive. Before Kirby Air Riders, we'll have the Hyrule Warriors, which, Nintendo hasn't been promoting that one as much. You'd think we'd see more given that it's coming out so soon, but maybe they're just expecting that to be a more niche title. I don't know. It's definitely not getting as much attention as Kirby Air Riders is, which is pretty fascinating. And then, you got Metroid after that, but that's also on Switch 1. So yeah, this is really being positioned as one of the biggest Switch 2 games, which is crazy to see. I did not think I would live to see the day of a Kirby Air Ride sequel being treated with such respect, and that's pretty damn cool. Now, the question must be raised, did this need two presentations, the first of which was 40 minutes, the second of which was 60 minutes? I don't know. I mean, I guess you could argue it didn't, but to me, that's kind of besides the point. As Sakurai does lay out in this Direct, this is a dream game for many of us. This is a really big deal that a sequel to Kirby Air Ride is finally happening after 23 years. That's pretty wild. Something I didn't really think I would ever see. I'd kind of written this off. If you are a fan of Kirby Air Ride and have been wanting a new game, this is just an incredibly big deal. However long the guy wants to take to talk about it is fine with me. When I see the argument of, with the last Direct, it didn't need to be as long as it was, I say, yeah, that's fair enough. For me, as a fan of Kirby and Kirby Air Ride, I've had the idea of a Kirby Air Ride sequel in my head for well over a decade, and again, I'd kind of written it off. I didn't think it was that likely to happen. So seeing it happen is just astounding, and I'm so excited, and it looks so great. I'm personally totally fine with this amount of time being spent talking about the game. And one thing it does do is I think it does communicate just how much content is going on here. If that wasn't clear from the first Direct, I think it's definitely clear here. There's a ton of playable characters. We saw several new ones here. You got the main racing mode, City Trial, of course, returning with lots of new elements and a new map. And then you got Top Ride making its return from the original. Sakurai sort of teased it in the Direct where he was saying, yeah, we probably didn't need to bring this back, but we're doing it anyway. I say fair enough. I think it's welcome to have it return, even if it wasn't ever really the draw for the original Kirby Air Ride. I can't really see anyone complaining about it coming back. Why the hell not? And, we got a new story mode with some pretty fascinating lore. And so let's go over one of the biggest new things announced in the Direct, which is the road trip mode. This seems to be the main single-player mode, and in it you go down this road and select from a series of 3 different challenges, and these will take place across City Trial, Top Ride, and the racing mode. And it seems like there's going to be quite a variety of things to do here. It's a bit like the World of Light mode in Smash Bros. Ultimate, but, presumably with a little more variety than even that had, since those were just battles against computer opponents. Here, looks like we're going to have, a variety of different tasks to complete, and it just looks like a fun format for that. The other big thing that I really enjoyed seeing was the new lobby for online modes. You have this fully explorable little area to walk around in as the different characters. This is something you had a bit in Smash Ultimate with the lobbies, but this is a far more elaborate version of that. So I quite like that. I think in terms of questions and disappointments I had from the Direct, that might be the list of air ride courses. So it looks like we're getting 9 new courses alongside 9 returning tracks from the original Kirby Air Ride. That's every racing track from the original, which has been remade with the new engine and with new visuals. Seems to have the same music though, which is fine because the music has aged really well. That does bring you to a total of 18 tracks in the game, which for a racing game is definitely a bit low. You look at Mario Kart World recently, which had quite a few more tracks than that, and that also had the open world. In terms of the raw racing courses number, it's a little lower than I probably would have preferred, but with that said, it seems like there's going to be a lot of supplementary stuff in the game. You probably won't tire out of those tracks too quickly because you have the other smaller stadium race tracks. You got City Trial, Top Ride, and the road trip mode. So I'm not too worried about that, but the raw number of tracks is a little low for a full-price racing game. All things considered, the actual racing itself is probably one of the less interesting aspects of Kirby Air Ride. That's just the way it's always been since the original, so I don't think it will feel particularly lacking based on what we've seen. Also, with these stages, that brings us a bit to the story mode, because one of these stages had a question mark title, so they did not reveal the title of that stage, but if you look at the elements contained therein and the music being used, it's pretty clear that you are inside the Starship Nova from Kirby Superstar Milky Way Wishes. You also see Nova in the final cutscene that was shown at the end of the Direct, so clearly that stage is going to take place inside Nova, and Nova will presumably have some sort of role in the story. The story itself is kind of interesting that they gave it a story, but basically the air ride machines fall onto the planet Popstar, and they're deactivated and lifeless until they are activated by the residents of Dreamland, and so I guess everyone in Dreamland is riding around on these air ride machines, and they have some sort of like sentience to them. They're sort of like sentient cars somehow. And somehow this will connect to the Fountain of Dreams, which shows up, Galactic Nova, who shows up, and this mysterious dark matter-like thing named Zora. And there's also this like weird artifact that's somehow sentient or alive in some way. I think it's described as an inorganic life form. There is some lore happening, which I was not really expecting, and it's kind of cool. It will be interesting to see how that plays out, but it's kind of really fun to see some of these classic Kirby elements like the Fountain of Dreams and Nova returning in a new game. That's pretty unexpected. I really love the redesign of Nova. They've given it this like hyper detailed design. It sort of looks like a Death Star now. It's got all the little details there. That's an interesting design choice. I really have no idea how the Zora is going to connect to that, or the air ride machines. This is perhaps slightly cringy, but the question must be asked, is this indeed a canon Kirby game? So things being canon in Kirby is kind of a wibbly-wobbly situation in general. A lot of the things in the Kirby canon are background details that are elaborated on over time. Given that this is by a different developer than HAL Laboratory and is being done by Sakurai, you might think maybe it won't connect to the main Kirby continuity, if you want to call it that. But I think there's an argument to be made that, you know, you could probably consider it canon without too much issue. You know, Nova did blow up at the end of Milky Way Wishes, but, you know, that's not necessarily a reason it can't come back. Or it could be a different version of Nova. We've seen that before in Kirby Planet Robobot. I don't think we should get too caught up in whether it's canon or not. Either way, I think it'll be an interesting narrative that looks like it's going to incorporate some fun elements from the series past. We also did see some new bosses like Robo DDD, who has a fun new design. This is probably the 3rd or 4th version we've gotten of a robot DDD. There's HRD3 from Return to Dreamland. There's a robot DDD from Kirby's Dream Course. There's one in Kirby's Return to Dreamland who isn't HRD3. So we've gotten a lot of King DDD robots over the years. It's a fine tradition that is carrying on in this game. It makes sense since King DDD is one of the main playable characters. And we did also get a glimpse at some other bosses, one of whom seems to be Nightmare. There was another one shown that I couldn't really decipher what it was. Cool to see Nightmare coming back as a boss. I'm curious to see what that'll be like. Speaking of Nightmare, they went over the voice actors for the game's announcers, 2 of which have a history with the Kirby series, at least 2 of which. I don't know if there's any more in the other languages, but the Japanese voice actor, voice B for the game, is the voice actress of Kirby, and voice actor A for the main announcer is apparently the voice of Nightmare and the Nightmare Enterprise salesman from the Japanese anime. So that's fun to see those actors return, especially Kirby. That's fun to have that voice actress being an announcer. Basically every language that Nintendo localizes, it seems, has an announcer in that language, which is pretty cool. That is something that carries over from Smash Bros, I believe. And you get 2 different options for each of the languages, and you can mix and match them if you so please. Just a lot of attention to detail, a lot of customizability, which is not unexpected, but also fun to see. In terms of new characters, we got some good ones. We got Taranza, my boy. He was expected, so I think that's why he was shown first. You kind of have to have him alongside Susie and Magalore. They're part of a little bit of a trio. Then you got a character I did not expect, or a set of characters, I should say. Lo and La, debuted in the original Kirby's Dream Land, obviously are from the Adventures of Lo games. And these characters function a bit like ice climbers in that they're conjoined. You play as them at the same time. Great to see them return, and that's a fun deep cut character to be included. You also got Daroch, the mouse. He's sporting what appears to be a slightly updated design and looks very cool. And then you got Rocky, the standard enemy from Superstar, and I guess probably earlier games he appeared in. Rick, the hamster, our good friend, making his racing debut. That's pretty sick. The other 2 animal friends I don't believe are playable. Kind does make an appearance in one of the stages. I don't know if Ku does. I imagine he's in the game in some capacity somewhere. Then you got Scarfy, another enemy character. He can go from his cute form to his frightening form, which is appropriate. Never thought I'd see the day when Scarfy was a playable character in a Kirby game. And then you got Marks, one of Sakurai's favorite Kirby characters, judging by how many games he has appeared in that were helmed by Sakurai. So no surprise to see him here. And then you get just standard Waddle Dee, just the classic, and that's a fine inclusion as well. We got Bandana Waddle Dee and we got standard Waddle Dee. Why the hell not? I did like the moveset of Taranza that was shown. It looks like he's got some Spider-Man web-slinging action going on. Really approve of that. We got to see quite a few different machines. Some of the highlights were seeing the legendary air ride machines. We didn't see a new one, we just saw the Hydra and the Dragoon from the original game. I wouldn't rule out there being a new legendary air ride machine, though. I think that's pretty likely. And they changed it a bit, how it works when you collect it in City Trial, where the pieces lock together when you collect them, which I think is a good change, probably. You can also apparently customize your vehicle in a variety of different ways with stickers, patterns, objects you can attach to them. And it looks like a very deep system of customization, and that's apparently what you're going to be using your currency for, is that, which is good use of currency. I like that a lot. There's also headwear that you can equip on your characters, just another piece of customization that's totally unnecessary, but fun inclusion. So any one of these individual features probably isn't that big a deal, but when you put them all together, it does really come across that a lot of care and detail has been put into this game. Far more than you probably would have expected from a Kirby Air Ride sequel. And to go alongside that, you got the gummies, which are a very goofy inclusion. These are little gummy versions of the different carts and characters in the game. They really don't do much. You just can kind of play around with them in this physics-based environment, toss them around, make them go flying. So they're kind of like this game's version of trophies from Smash Bros, but a little more specialized and fun. We also got a bit more details on the soundtrack. Big respect to Sakurai for telling consumers who is making the game. Nintendo themselves have been really bad about that recently, but I guess since it's Sakurai, he can decide whether or not he wants to talk about the developers making the game, or in fact the composers or voice actors who are also contributing to the game. In the case of the music, we got the confirmation that Shogo Sakai, the composer of the original game and many other games, including Kirby games, is returning to work on the soundtrack, which is really great. I believe he retired from working full-time at HAL Laboratory relatively recently, but he has contributed to Kirby titles since that time. He had some tracks in Forgotten Land plus Star-Crossed Worlds, and then apparently is doing music for this game, which is really great. We also got the confirmation of a fellow I'm less familiar with the name of, who's Noriyuki Iwadare, something like that, who apparently composed the main vocal theme for the game and some other tracks. and he worked on Kid Icarus Uprising and Smash Bros. Two of these are pretty major Sakurai collaborators, so no surprise to see them return. I mean, the music, from what we've heard, sounds excellent. This very well might be a contender for the best Kirby soundtrack ever. Something I mentioned in my Forgotten Land review is that I would like the Kirby games to incorporate more either live recorded instruments or digital instrumentation, which sounds more authentic to real instruments. I don't have the music vocabulary to describe this super well, but that's basically the idea I was getting at in my recent review. And that's something you do get with this Kirby Air Riders soundtrack. They sound far more orchestrated. I can't confirm whether or not they were done with live recorded instruments, or if they were, to what degree, but they definitely sound more in that style, which is something I've been looking for from Kirby for a long time. Great to see it here. And you also get quite a bit of music from the series past, and it looks like you'll be able to play that in a variety of different modes, like the lobbies as well as City Trial. Interestingly, we got some accessibility features showcased, one of which puts some lines on the screen, some boxes and such, which apparently I believe is to help people who suffer with motion sickness. If that helps more people enjoy the game, I think that's a really great addition, something that's a really great quality of life feature that you don't really necessarily get in many Nintendo games. They're actually not great with that in a lot of cases, just providing options to the players. I believe a lot of people suffered with motion sickness for Donkey Kong Bonanza. So something like this mode in Donkey Kong Bonanza, maybe that could have helped people. I think that's great. We also did get the announcement of 3 new amiibo. Yeah, the issue here is that you're looking at like a $250 price tag for all of the amiibo before taxes, which is just so unfortunate. I've talked about it at length in other videos, so I won't go over it too much. But with that said, the amiibo do look really great. Mennonite with the Dark Star, Chef Kawasaki with one of the new vehicles. That's a fun and surprising inclusion. And then you got King Dedede with the tank vehicle, which can switch it from driving mode to flight mode or whatever. Cool detail. I do wonder if the Dedede amiibo will be more expensive because it seems to be bigger and it has that extra feature. I wouldn't put it past Nintendo to charge like $10 extra for that or something. I could see that happening, unfortunately. Maybe not, but... And those will be launching later in the year of 2026, I believe. I mean, they're cool. You can use them to alter your cursor on the main menu, which is a little bit of a shame that that's sort of put behind a paywall, essentially, with the amiibo. Ideally, you would want that kind of content just available in the game as an unlockable. Not ideal. I mean, it's not a huge thing to be able to change the cursor for the game, but just given the amiibo are so expensive, having any content locked behind them is a little bit of a shame. We got a look at some of the cutscenes in the game. I discussed those with the story. They look really good. It has voice-acted narration, which is pretty surprising. Also, oh god, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna bring this up. Unfortunately, I'm gonna bring this up. Pokemon Legends ZA came out recently, and you know, that's by the Pokemon Company, huge brand, and it has, you know, quite a lot of dialogue. It's an RPG. I haven't played it myself, I'll put that as a qualifier, but you look at some of the videos and you have the characters making mouth movements as if they're talking, and you got like the subtitles, but there's just no voice acting in the game at all. And then you got Kirby Air Riders coming out a month later. It's got like full voiced narration in every language, and it's got 2 options for it. And it's like, Pokemon, you gotta step up your game at some point, man. You know, Pokemon has been in a rough place for quite some time, unfortunately, and who knows if that'll ever change. Oh well, okay, side tangent, rant aside. Let's keep moving on. One of the bigger deals they announced at the end of the Direct is that there's going to be a global test ride happening in November. I think that'll be fun to have a chance to try out the game before it comes out. Maybe some people who aren't sold in the game based on what they've seen in the Directs can get a chance to try it out and decide whether or not it appeals to them. I think that's just a great thing. This happened with Smash Bros, I believe, or at least there was a demo for Smash 3DS at least, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's happened with other Nintendo games like some of the Splatoons. So yeah, I like these network tests, and it'll be really fun to try out the game pre-release. I think I've covered most of the big heavy-hitting news items from this Direct. In summation, I'm just feeling real pleased as punch, if you will. I have those minor quibbles about, you know, the amount of tracks feels a little low for a full-price game, especially then now that we're in the Switch 2 era where games are $70. But, you know, balancing that out is all of the other stuff in the game, which looks very exciting, and looks like this is the kind of game you can keep playing for quite some time. Sakurai did make a point of saying, which I think is very important, that the game is not going to have any DLC apart from the day one update, which is going to be free, of course. So what you get in the package is going to be the final form of the game, which I think is kind of an underrated thing. This is looking like a game where you're going to be, at least I am, from what has been shown, pleased with the amount of stuff it has. I do hope that the online will remain active for a long time post-release. The other Kirby games that have had online, like Kirby Fighters 2, Kirby Battle Royale was, I believe, the first, Kirby's Dream Buffet. Those games, the online has unfortunately died off pretty quickly. I believe with Dream Buffet, it was a couple months before you basically couldn't find any other players online, which is a shame. I do hope that this is able to retain a player base for quite some time post-launch. I didn't talk about the rankings, but you have different rankings based on like color, which is just kind of a more friendly way of doing it. Sakurai kind of pointed that out, that yeah, it's not really about making players feel superior to each other, grouping them together with players at a similar skill set, which I think is a positive way of looking at it. Positive thinking can go a long way. So I approve of that. I think that's one of the better things about Sakurai's games, is that he tries to make them as inclusive as possible for as many players as possible. I think that is a commendable thing. Did it need to be 60 minutes? I mean, I think he really did want to sell the scope of this game, and that there is quite a lot to do in it. Based on what they've shown, I'm comfortable saying it looks worth $70. I don't freaking care. As much as any game is worth $70, probably not that many if you want to be real technical about it, because games have been 60 for so long. That's been the main premium price point. Now it's going up to 70 for Nintendo titles, alongside the other Nintendo titles that have been $70. I think it fits alongside those very well. You know, in some ways, in terms of customizability, it's definitely superior to Mario Kart World. That's a game that doesn't have that many layers of customizability. People have had issues with the online mode not being very customizable, that it forces you to do those intermission tracks as opposed to the main race tracks. A lot of the time, Nintendo's sort of been struggling back and forth with their player base, updating it. And that's a game that's $80 compared to something like Donkey Kong Bonanza, largely single player experience. Yeah, I don't know. I don't freaking care, honestly. It's a Kirby Air Ride sequel, and it looks like they've gone all out on it, and to a degree I would not have imagined. Also, the amount of characters is quite vast, and apparently there's more to come, which is very exciting. I don't know when or in what context those characters will be revealed. There are a couple of major omissions that I would like to see. It's not a deal breaker if they're not in the game. Honestly, at this point, the roster is more than big enough to me. It's got a vast majority of the characters who I think you would want from a Kirby racing game. But the ones that they haven't gotten yet that I think would be good to have are Elfilin from Forgotten Land. There's really not that much Forgotten Land stuff in this game, apart from they have those like little animated 2D animated characters in the story mode that have these sort of canned little interactions that they have with each other, and in that you get the building turtle from Forgotten Land, as well as some other enemies like the computer virus from Superstar and some of the 64 enemies. Yeah, so there's Elfilin. Then you can get, I don't know, maybe some other characters like Adeline or Ribbon from Kirby 64, the Mage Sisters from Kirby Star Allies. There's still people you could put in, but I think in terms of the main Kirby characters and then having some fun meme picks like Scarfy, Cappy, Starman, I think that's a fair enough roster. I think that's going to be good enough. Really looking forward to this game. What more can I say? It looks like a real treat. This is being positioned as Nintendo's main holiday title, and based on what has been shown, it's really living up to that expectation. I will say visually, definitely looks really good, but, you know, maybe could look better. I'm not entirely sure what resolution it's running at. I believe it might be 1440p. But then again, you know, looking at it over a stream is a bit different than having it in your hands and playing it. I also got to shout out the main menu. It's modeled after a table. Sakurai's wife does the menus, so they sort of have this consistent theme throughout his games. Yeah, this is following alongside that tradition. It looks like a really good menu. It looks like it's going to fit in well with the other Sakurai menus. The way they've done it with the table is pretty fun, and you get like little details like there's an eraser, there's a pen, you get that little Kirby cursor flying around, which we have seen before on the Kirby Air Riders Twitter page. I don't use Twitter anymore for, you know, the reason you'd probably expect, but it is cool to see that little icon finally revealed. Just a great direct. I did a reaction to it on the Onion Creature Crate bonus channel. Go check that out if you want a full reaction. I had a good time watching it. Yes, the first one. It's the kind of thing where you're like, all right, it's been 30 minutes. What else do they have to show? And then they just kept going with all this random stuff, which I think does build up to a pretty compelling whole, at least from my perspective, as a massive fan of Kirby Air Ride. So I'm very pleased. I think if you're a fan, you've got reason to be pleased. I don't know if you're like a normie who doesn't care about Kirby, what you would think of this. I really just can't offer that perspective because that's not me, and it never will be me. But, you know, from my perspective, yeah, this is a home run. Knocked it out of the park. Doing a very good job at selling the game. I have not been this excited for a game in quite some time. So we're looking forward to November. It's gonna be a great time. It's coming very soon. All right then, I will catch you later. Onion Creature out.